Ben Fagan here with another episode of Career Catch the Podcast, and on this episode, I'm joined by former golfer, now assistant athletic director at Georgian Court University, Krissy Ortiz. On this episode, Krissy and I talk about how to build genuine relationships, the importance of those relationships, and how those relationships can help lead to new opportunities. It's an awesome conversation. Let's get to it. Well, I'm super excited, as I am for just about every episode. That's no surprise to you listening at home or wherever you're listening. But today I have Krissy Ortiz, who is just a superstar in every way, and I am beyond pumped to get excited with this conversation. So welcome, Krissy. How you doing today?
Hey, Ben. Thanks for having me on the podcast. This is awesome. I'm happy to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we're going to touch on a few different things today, but before we dive too deep into past, present, and future, can you kind of catch me up onto what your latest endeavors are and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis now?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I am the Assistant Director of Athletics for Compliance at Georgian Court University. I came to Georgian Court following graduation in 2019 at Lynn. I started out as a grad assistant. And, spent 2 years getting my master's degree here and working within the athletics department. And then in June, I started full-time as just an assistant AD, kind of doing a little bit of everything, dipping my hands into different buckets and learning more, expanding a lot more from my role as a GA. And then in October, I transitioned into working full-time in compliance and running the compliance side here at Georgian Court.
Very cool. That's awesome. So one of the things I want to touch on, because I think this is unique to, again, not just the industry that you're in, but all different industries, and kind of getting involved and started within your career. So you got this opportunity through being a GA grad assistant and then have since parlayed it into that full-time career. And that's kind of what I want to touch on is how do you go about transitioning from a GA, an intern, a student worker, whatever it might be, into that full-time career, or not necessarily only a career in that company or that department or institution, but maybe other opportunities. So how do you take one opportunity and turn it into another opportunity?
So that's a great question. When I started off, I knew when I graduated at Lynn, I knew I wanted to get my master's degree. I knew I wanted to be a grad assistant. So I used my resources and I used my contacts to reach out to people athletic directors that I knew who had openings for graduate assistants. So I applied to one at FAU. I was talking to people from PBA, Palm Beach Atlantic, talking to the athletic director at Rollins, and talking to the athletic director here at Georgian Court. I knew Laura Leisman. She's a mentor of mine. She's no longer at Georgian Court, but at the time when she was here, I was on Division II National SAC and she was on Division II Management Council, and we served on very similar committees. So I reached out to her and I knew that she had this position. I applied for it. I was very lucky to have been given this position. And then I kind of got here and proved myself and proved my value here and worked my way up. I know put a lot of days and a lot of hours in. I know because graduate assistant, my contract at least said it was 20 hours. Definitely did not do that. Put in so much more just to gain respect of coaches, gain respect of student athletes here. Obviously gaining more respect from my administrators, my SID, compliance director at the time, Laura, our AD. So there was that. And then when I was done, I was ready. I was applying to different jobs. I applied to a couple different schools, a couple different, assistant AD jobs or kind of entry-level positions within the athletics. And an opportunity opened up here, and I'm very blessed and very grateful that Laura gave me the opportunity, and then kind of fell into the role that I am currently in, just with people who kind of shuffled around. Our compliance director, so our compliance director, who was here for 16 years, she retired at the end of the spring, and she retired in June. And then we hired somebody starting late July. she was here for a couple months and then pursued a different opportunity at a different institution. And they asked me if I wanted to transition into compliance. And that's where I am today. So, obviously I worked hard, and obviously I proved a little bit to the coaches, and I earned respect from them. But that's essentially how I got to compliance today.
I think that there's so many good messages in there. And I think one thing that you are the poster person for is creating your own opportunities. And I want to touch on that, but one of the things within that kind of umbrella, still within creating your own opportunities, is having these conversations that you had, like, reaching out to these different ADs at different level schools and different geographical locations, different people within athletic administration. And so can you kind of walk me through what those conversations were like, in terms of what you would ask them, what you hope to get out of them, and what you did get out of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about it now, obviously in hindsight, you're like, oh, did I really do that? But I just knew that, and I still know that I want to be an athletic director down the line. This is what I want to do. But at the time I was on national SAC. So I was given the opportunities. I was lucky enough to be in the opportunities and be in these circumstances that I could speak to different athletic directors and get to know them both on a personal level and on a professional level. So having those relationships already kind of built, I was able to, go up to them and say, hey, like, I want to learn a little bit more about what you do. This is what I want to do in the future. Is there any way that you have 10, 15 minutes of your time to talk about it? And then obviously I'm like, do you have any positions? Do you have any, openings? I would like to apply. Kind of going through that route. Like I said, I thinking about it now, I feel like that was bold, but you have to make those bold moves to get what you want. You have to create those opportunities, and you're just being genuine and honest with people and say, like, hey, this is what I want. If you can help me, I would be very grateful for the opportunity. And if what's the worst that they could say? If they say no, they say no. But if not, you don't know the road that can lead, like me. Like I remember sitting down with Laura at the NCAA National Convention. It was my senior year. It was January of my senior year. And I knew, like I said, I knew I wanted to be a grad assistant. I knew, I wanted my master's degree. I knew if I wanted to move up the ranks in higher education and college athletics, this is a route that I had to go through. So I remember at convention, sitting down with Laura for a cup of coffee, sitting down with Penny Parker, who's the athletic director at Rollins. And I even remember sitting down with Devin at one point, and Sarah Kotraki, saying, like, can you help me navigate? This is what I want to do. This is what this is where I want to go down. And I do remember Laura even saying that, oh, I wish we had a position open because you would be great. Look, a couple months later, little did I know that there was going to be an opportunity. But just having that conversation, that initial conversation with her, look where it kind of led to. So it was great. Create opportunities, use your relationship, use your network, is essentially the key.
I think that is such a big, like, key, as you said, an important thing, because we as people don't give other people enough credit in terms of their desire to help us, and I think, like, you found out for yourself, it sounds like you got to experience people helping you by just simply asking. And so I think that's such a big message there. And I want to hear your perspective. Were you nervous having these conversations? Were you scared? What was kind of your approach when you're sitting down? Because I think a lot of times you get involved with, or you could easily get caught up in the titles. Oh, this is the athletic director of a school. They're the head of the entire program. Like, what do I have to offer as, 22, 23, 24-year-old, whatever it might be? Was that your mindset, or how did you approach that? Dealing with nerves, no nerves, excitement? What was your whole take on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people know me as, like, a person who's very open and friendly with people, but I'm also kind of an introvert, and I'm also very shy. Even growing up as a little kid, like, I was a very, very shy kid, and I still have those tendencies today, but I knew what I wanted. And having these conversations with these people, at the end of the day, they're just people. Like, titles, yes, titles are important and titles matter, but they are just people, and they're willing to have conversations with people with, it doesn't matter age, it doesn't matter anything. If you show genuine interest and express that you genuinely care, I'm a firm believer that, anybody is willing to help you if they can see you're genuine and you really want to learn and you really want to grow. And that's essentially how I took it with these people, with these athletic directors. I was also, like I said, very fortunate to be put and be in the same room as a lot of these people making decisions on committees in the NCAA. So I felt like I was able to use that to my advantage and use the network that I have to reach out to people and have the conversation. And then once you do have that conversation, sometimes you have to perform. Sometimes you have to express and show you're genuine, who you are as a person to those people.
That's an interesting point too that you bring up, is like making it okay and an appropriate thing to do to express your interest in say that, because I think even just thinking in my own terms, in my own case, sometimes you might not think, or that might not be the first thought of saying, hey, this is something I want to do, and also saying, how do I do it? You don't have to pretend like you have all the answers, and that's very different. You can show interest and be confident and do all these things without knowing all of the answers. And I think that's such an important thing that you're touching on right there. And one thing that popped in my mind that I thought was interesting is you do come off as extremely outgoing, very personable, very friendly, but you say you may lean more towards the introverted side, and more shy in terms of that. So how have you either used that, either as a strength, or how have you kind of navigated those fields? Has there been anything to help you, push you beyond that? Or what has your relationship been with being in a field where you need to be extroverted in many senses, but also being able to still be yourself and be genuine to who you are?
Yes. So I would 100% classify myself as a relationship-based person. So I'm a person, I believe in making as many relationships, making genuine relationships and genuine connections with people. So starting off as a grad assistant, I was invited to a lot of staff meetings. And I knew it was not my place to speak up as a GA. Like, I knew I was there. I was a big observer. I watched and watched and watched. Granted, in my head, I made, I had my own thoughts and decisions and everything, but I knew it was not my place to speak up, and it was not my place to make any grand changes or grand anything. So being able to have that opportunity to sit at the table and be in the room, you also need to know kind of what your place is. So that's kind of how I did. And then just forming that relationship with coaches and other members of the staff here at Georgian Court, having those not off the record conversations, but having those conversations with coaches in their office to then, provide whatever input, but also knowing that in a grand scheme, I knew as a grad assistant, it wasn't my place to kind of speak up. So that's kind of how I navigated it. That's kind of the way I did it. I knew it's, you have to observe people. You have to kind of formulate your own things, but there's a time and place when to speak up and when not to speak up. And, if you do formulate those relationships with people, those conversations become easier. And those conversations do happen, just not in that big grand scheme as, a person who should, who should not, a person who not necessarily has the ability to speak up, but still has the same ideas. There's a time and place for everything. That makes sense.
And you keep mentioning relationships, and you said you're a big relationship person, and you said something, relationships, but in a genuine way. So what does that mean to build a genuine relationship with somebody?
Granted, we all have things that we want to accomplish. Like there's conversations and times and place for everything, but actually caring about the person, actually caring about, what's going on, professionally with people, but also personally. Like I care a lot about, how you are doing as a person and, having that connection. A piece of advice that I read it in a book or I heard it on a podcast and it stuck with me for a very, very long time is never let a relationship drop to zero. So in that it's, yes, you may be friends with a person or you may develop a personal relationship and personal connection with a person, but never let it go to zero. So even every once in a while, if you think about that person or, you read an article or see something that reminds you of the person, reach out to them. And, if they answer you, they do. If they don't, they don't. Like, that you have done what you can to be friends with the person or, develop a professional or personal relationship with the person. And then odds are, if you haven't heard from them in a while and you send them something, they'll think it's like the greatest thing in the world. Like, oh, I haven't heard from Krissy in a while. This is awesome. How are you? And you develop that partnership and that relationship with that person by just, reaching out when you think you remember that person and continue to build that all along.
And Chris, for those of you scoring at home, Krissy talks the talk, she walks the walk, because this is actually how this got organized too. Krissy and I hadn't talked in a while, and far too long in my opinion too. But
yes, I agree. I agree.
It was so nice, but it was a great example, like you mentioned. It was like, I would love to hear from you, and you get going in your day to day, and those things slip. But it's so important. I love that concept of not letting it go to zero. But you sent a message. I saw Krissy sent me a message. I'm like, my day lit up, my eyes lit up. It was so nice and so exciting. And this provided an opportunity for us to catch up, both on the podcast level, in professional, see what you're up to, but also on the personal level, which I think is so important to do just for in general quality of life. I think the relationships are big things. Now, when you're talking about genuine relationships and building these, I have to imagine that this is a integral part, a big piece of what you're doing in your role now. So how do you use that relationship building technique and strategy and approach with the coaches, with the athletes who you are, working so closely with every day?
Absolutely. So one of my biggest thing is communication. Communication is key to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Obviously in our profession, we use a lot of emails, but you can never overstate something. As long as information is flowing back and forth, that's to me one of the most important things, is to help one build relationships, and two, to keep that going is making sure communication is there, because then you earn respect and you earn that peace with people through that communication, talking to people, picking up the phone. Obviously, with compliance, we work a lot with financial aid, we work a lot with admissions, we work a lot with just housing other people on campus. So a lot of things that I've done is, if I have a question, I pick up the phone. Hey, I have a question about financial aid, students' financial aid. That I'd call them, I email them, or I walk over. And, walking over to me is going to see that person face to face, not only establishes that relationship, but it helps bridge the gap between different departments on campus, and it helps build that partnership. Because if somebody, especially me being relatively new in this role and coming from a person who was in this role for 15, 16 years before that, a lot of people always knew who that person was. Then I come in, obviously, granted, she was there for 15 years. She was a lot older than I am. I come in, different face, fresh eyes, fresh face. You have to rebuild those relationships and rebuild those partnerships, because, somebody who was there for such a long tenure, leaves have to have those face-to-face conversations, over the phone conversations, emails, communication. Just, I can't stress that enough. Being able to communicate with people is very important.
Beautiful. I love it. So you mentioned being you're younger, on the younger side. If you don't mind me asking, you can mind, how old are you?
I am 24.
24, good. And I had a feeling you were 24 because we're in the same grade.
Yes, we are.
we're in the same grade coming through school. But because I wanted you to ask you and for you to say you're 24, just to make that point, because the position that you're in, it on the outside, it might feel like that needs to be filled by somebody much older than you. And I know that there are a lot of challenges coming into positions where you are younger and, you're not that far removed from school yourself. So what has, the benefits and what has the challenges have been, or you've experienced from being, young in this role? What has come easy? What has been more difficult for you?
Yes. So what comes easy is obviously being able to relate with students. So, I graduated from Lynn 2019. I've been, a couple of years removed from being a student athlete, but I still am close enough in age, and I'm still close enough to experiences that a regular student athlete has. A big challenge, though, is having that fresh face and that young face. People on campus still think that I'm a student. I had a conversation with somebody pretty up within the university, and her reaction was, "Oh yeah, are you a student?" I'm like, "No, I work in the department. I work in compliance. I was a grad assistant, but not anymore. I'm an employee here, and that's kind of how it is." So that's definitely one of the challenges that I've faced, is people thinking that I'm a student. But on the flip side is, once they get to know me, and once we start to have these, upper level conversations, they realize, they're like, "Nope, okay, you are an employee, you are part of our staff here at the university, at the institution." We apologize, but that's honestly one of the more difficult things. But I find it's easy to mask by, with acting as professional as you can. Being as responsible, dressing, clothing, I've noticed, does play a role in it. The more professional you dress, the more respect you earn from people, and the more opportunities that you can create, because yes, you are young, but people then will see you as a member of staff, as long as you continue to act in a professional and respectful manner. So
my 2 cents for, if you're feeling like you're young and you need to feel older, just grow a beard. That's all you need to do. You get a lot of respect growing the beard. So that would be my.
Well, unfortunately, I can't grow a beard, and it would be very weird if a young lady as myself
right. That might not be the beard for you. Yes, but for those beard growers out there, it's worked well for me. Also being 24 years old, it's very similar in the sense of the experiences. But I do find that it's the age becomes, I think, in many ways a superpower and a big strength. And I think that kind of goes on to think about things that you might feel at the surface level could be a detriment or a weakness, and see how, from a shift in perspective, how you can turn them into strength, or something that at the very least is no longer a deficit of yours. And so
Absolutely.
I think that's such a big piece. Talking about you wanting to become an athletic director, and you were so heavily involved in athletics here at Lynn, and both on the actual athletic side and the administration side as well. So this, it sounds like this is something that you love so much to do, but still, with every job, there are things that you love to do and things that you don't love to do. So how have you balanced that? Are there things in your job now that, hey, may not be your favorite thing, but you still have to do them? And if so, how do you you balance that so it doesn't take away your joy from the bigger picture?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of backtracking, I didn't go to college thinking that I wanted to be an athletic director. I went to college, if you would have asked me and I very heavily remember this, is when I went to college, when I thought I was going to graduate in 4 years, I wanted to be a professional golfer. Like, that's what I want to do. I came to Lynn to get better as a player and, you know, get a degree and then go play on the LPGA tour. That's what I wanted to do. But soon, very soon, I joined SAC my freshman year, and I realized that there's more to life than golf and more to life than studying. So with my experiences on SAC and then being that super, super fortunate to be on national SAC, that opened my eyes to this world and the world of athletic administration and all this awesome stuff that is involved, that, you know, comes with working in athletics. And that's when I did get involved more heavily at Lynn, and it definitely just shifted my perspective on what I wanted to do in life. So back to your question of some of the things that I do like and I don't like within this role is, you know, sometimes you have to have these hard conversations with students. Sometimes you have to have these hard conversations with coaches. It has not always been easy, but one of the things that I do like and I have realized is, you know, once you go and close the door, have these tough conversations, the door opens and, you know, conversation is over and, you know, things have to continue to move on. So that's something that I have learned. I have also learned that there's two sides, essentially, and granted, I'm still extremely young in my professional career. This may change and I may be completely off on this one, but I've noticed that there's two ways to become an athletic director. One is going the external side, so doing more fundraising, communications, all that kind of stuff. And then the other side direction is the internal work, the compliance work, the budgeting, the scholarships, all that kind of that side. I've kind of going back and forth what direction I want to take. Obviously, right now I am working more on the internal side, but, you know, who knows, 5-10 years down the road, maybe a couple of years, I decide I want to make this switch from the internal side to the external side, to then ultimately, you know, get where I want to be as an AD. But we'll see. I'm still, like I said, super, super young in my career. And there's a lot to learn. Obviously, I know mistakes are going to be made. Great moments are going to happen. I see everything like a wave. Life is a wave, and you know, you're going to have your peaks, you're going to have your valleys, but ultimately, things will be good and things will be bad. And, you know, you can't take the highs too high and the lows too low.
So you're working towards becoming an athletic director, and I think that's, again, going back to what you were saying too, is being open on a couple at different points throughout your life, working so heavily. And I can relate to that, you know, very, very much, you know, with wanting to be a professional baseball player. And that's, you know, why I came to Lynn, to further that career. But I think whether it's with sports, in sports, out of sports, business, whatever it is that you want to do, still being open, trying new things, getting involved like you did, because through your involvement, you were able to open up to something that you didn't even know existed. And that's something very similar to me in my academic career. Was, you know, before school, wasn't into the technology or the video editing, but I took a class on it, fell in love with it, and it's now something that, you know, I do all the time. But it's exposing yourself to those things, you know, that are, I think, so cool. So once you did that, you are going down this path of becoming an athletic director, and that's, you know, what you want to do in your future. And like you said, that potentially could change, or what that looks like may change. But as of right now, talking right in this moment, why is that such an intriguing position for you? Why do you want to become an athletic director?
I just want to help student athletes. I thought about this ever since, you know, it first crossed my mind. I had such a great time as a student athlete, and I know, obviously, everybody's circumstances are different. Everybody has a different time as a student athlete, but I want to help student athletes have that amazing experience that I have. That's essentially what it goes down to, is I had a great experience as a student athlete. I know not everybody has that amazing experience, but I do want other student athletes to feel that joy and that amazing feeling during their time as a student athlete. So helping student athletes and putting student athletes first is obviously something that I have on my mind every day, and every decision that I make is for student athletes.
There's not a doubt in my mind that you'll get there should that be what you want to do and continue to do. But whatever it is that you want to do, I know you'll take care of that business. And there's so much more and so many different directions we could go, but it is that time of the show, which I know you're very well prepared for, because we spoke about this on the phone and you said, I got it locked and loaded. It's time to cash out, where you leave us with your biggest piece of advice, biggest lesson learned, biggest knowledge, biggest tip for down the road to leave myself and everybody listen wherever they're at, with a little bit of extra cash in their pockets. So what do you have for us today, Krissy?
Number one, use your relationships. I know I said that multiple times. Use your contacts, use your relationships, be genuine in your relationships. And number two is be confident. I know, people are young, most of the listeners here are young and starting their professional careers or still in college, but be confident in what you want to do. People pick up on your vibes. So make sure you're putting out good vibes out in the world, and, people pick up on that, and, you can accomplish anything that you want. Look at me, I didn't think I would be here, and, keep working hard for anything that you want to do.
I love it. Well, Krissy, thank you again, with everything that I have, for coming on. I appreciate you reaching out, to about it, just so we could connect, and continue to build that relationship, which is so fun. But I'm beyond excited to see what you have in your future, because I know you're going to do great things. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. And I'm super proud of all that you've done. And this podcast is amazing. So keep doing great things.